Hello, welcome once again to FAIRtax Power Radio. I'm Bob Paxton.
And I'm Ron Malero.
And we are the FAIRtax Guys.
Guys.
And before we get started,
Okay.
let me tell everybody how to get in touch with us. FAIRtaxGuys@gmail.com is our email address. And our Facebook page, the FAIRtax Guys, are on Facebook. And those are the two best ways to do it. And, of course, we're on Spreaker, SoundCloud, iTunes, where else? iHeartRadio.
iHeartRadio.
I'm production, you're distribution. You figure all this stuff out.
It's, the Spreaker is our main platform, and that lets us branch out to these others. And we have the free app. If you have an iPhone or an Android, you can go to your app store, look for FAIRtax Power Radio. There's a free app, and you can download it, and that's a very simple way to get to our FAIRtax Power Radio episodes. So can't make it any easier than that.
And encourage all your friends to do the same. Download that and listen to FTPR, and you will be well educated on why the income tax needs to go away and the fair tax needs to be the law of the land.
And this is a critical time, with the new administration coming in, promising tax reform and so forth. We need to make our voices heard to make sure that we influence the new administration to adopt the fair tax.
Oh, yes. Now, until yesterday, I had never spoken one-on-one with a presidential candidate before, but now I have. And great. You know this guy pretty well, Kerry Bowers.
Yes, yeah. He was a presidential candidate. Unfortunately,
didn't get a lot of media attention, but he was out there.
He doesn't have a name that's well known, not like Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton and so forth. But my wife and I followed him, and we actually went to a couple of various meetings in which he was presenting his platform. He had a detailed platform, and when you went to his website, it not only talked about his positions on particular issues, but it gave detailed solutions on how he was going to handle that issue. You don't hear that from a lot of candidates. They talk in very loose, nebulous terms, we're going to take care of this problem, we're going to take care of that problem, but they don't say how. Kerry told you how. So he's a very detailed person. And before that, when the Florida Fair Tax Education Association started, he actually was our first director here in Florida. But then he moved to Nevada, and that's when Mark Upton became our director. But very involved with the fair tax, U.S. veteran, businessman, presidential candidate, congressional candidate. Kerry's got a varied background, and he's passionate about the fair tax.
And a really interesting guy to talk to.
Yeah.
So let's get on with it. This is our interview with Kerry Bowers here for FAIRtax Power Radio. And FAIRtax Power Radio is pleased to be talking today with another gentleman who wears quite a number of hats, one of which has been a presidential candidate. Welcome today to Kerry Bowers. Glad to have you with us. Thank you for talking to us.
Thank you, Bob, and it's a pleasure to be here with you on FAIRtax Radio today.
Okay, before we get started, let me get into something. I want to hear directly from the horse's mouth, one of my favorite sayings, your description of why the Paul Ryan Better Way plan is not true tax reform. Go.
Well, I don't see it as true tax reform, and I think actually choosing the title A Better Way was probably appropriate. Better in the sense that what measures they're trying to implement will be a little better than what we currently have today, but certainly they will be temporary measures. And the reason why they will be temporary is because none of the avenues that have allowed our tax system to basically digress and expand from what we had with the last tax reform measure, which was under the Reagan administration in 1986. We saw it expand and grow to the system that we have today, and that's exactly what we're going to be looking at in terms of what the President and the Congress are introducing. What they are introducing in this particular case is actually recommending going from what is an income-based tax system that we have today that includes income taxes, payroll taxes, and corporate taxes to yet another income-based system that includes both income taxes, payroll taxes, and corporate taxes. So my fear is that we're really not seeing true tax reform. What we're seeing is but another Republican timid approach to what I think will be appeasement to the people that are looking for some relief. But I'm afraid that relief, number one, and the measures that they put in will be temporary, and number two, what they're proposing, based upon some of the things I've seen, will not actually achieve revenue neutrality, so we will probably see an increase in our deficits as well as an increase in the debt. So I'm really not on board with the President and the Congress in this particular case.
Oh, I love it. We go from an income tax system administered and enforced by the IRS to an income tax system administered and enforced by the IRS, and you call it big tax reform.
That's exactly right. And that's a very good point. Because we're looking at a system that's going to be continued to be administered at the federal level, the IRS is going to continue to exist. So that means we're going to continue to have approximately 100,000 employees out there that are going to be responsible for trying to collect and enforce and administer a program across the spectrum of approximately 160 million individual filers plus another 30 million businesses. And this is one of the great benefits of the fair tax is we eliminate the IRS, and that is defunded over a 3-year period. We go to just a small sales tax bureau at the federal level, along with an excise tax bureau that administer those taxes that aren't administered today by Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms Division. And we drop that down to the states. And we do so on a voluntary basis and a reimbursement basis where the states will be able to retain 1/4% of all the revenues they collect. So we eliminate really an unnecessary tier of agents. And it's interesting, if you go back and read through the Federalist Papers, this is one of the things that Alexander Hamilton talked about. He said that to avoid the disgust of the people and the states, when you're going to have a tax on the same objects, and there's no reason to have a duplication of efforts at both the federal and the state level. And this is exactly what the fair tax does. We get rid of the IRS and all the tyranny that comes with an IRS system and an absolutely incomprehensible tax code that even they don't understand, and we drop it down to a very simple tax system where you pay your taxes when you buy something, it's administered by the state, and it's administered in conjunction with state sales taxes, of which 45 of the 50 states already have. So it's just an overall common sense, pragmatic approach to tax collection.
Yeah, but what people have to understand is that the politicians, they depend on the complexity and the fact that you and I and just about every other average Joe out there can't begin to comprehend it, and they have been making hay out of raking in a lot of campaign cash selling tax favors for a long time. So the system we've got is the system that benefits them, and they're not likely to change it unless we the people rise up and make them do it.
Well, that's exactly right. And one of the things that I like to push home to folks whenever I'm talking to them about the system we have today and the system being proposed by President-elect Trump and the Congress, and there's really only one reason why we have an income tax or an income-based tax system today. And that one reason can be summed up in exactly one word, and that is control. It is the means by which the President and the Congress, in other words, our federal government, is able to reign control over the people and do so through their personal resources and also reign control over American businesses. It is, if they had to give up an income tax system, then they would be losing the very means by which that they can pick winners and losers and whom they're going to reward and whom they're going to punish. So control, that's really the word we need to focus on as fair taxers. The whole system of income taxation is about control. So do you want to continue to be controlled, or do you want the freedom from that control that comes through the fair tax?
How about a couple of examples on how that's used? I can think of one, the tax credits for buying electric cars. If they want you to do something, they'll give you a credit or an incentive for it. And if you don't want you to do something, they'll slap a tax penalty on it. Throw a couple examples out there for us.
Well, those are good ones that you've got right there in terms of the control. Any of the tax measures that come up, whether it be with the oil industry, whether it be with agriculture, any subsidies that we have out there today, all of those are parts and pieces of the means of being able to control. We often hear about Congress talking about all these terrible lobbyists that we have out there, but lobbyists exist only because of the tax system that we have today, or at least we'll say that that's the tool that they utilize the most. And who makes that tool available? Well, Congress makes that tool available. And they make that tool available typically through temporary tax measures. And every 2 to 4 years, it's going to be one of those tax measures that's going to possibly be up for a vote as to whether it's going to be extended or not. Again, on the oil industry, agriculture industry, you name it, a number of industries out there. get benefit from temporary tax measures. And so what happens is the Congress and their staff, they'll go to these events, or they'll go and visit various businesses and corporations and say, hey, we've got this tax measure coming up. What are you going to do to help out my congressman or help me out in order to be able to keep this tax measure alive that's going to support you? You know, there's been a number of good books out there. One of them in particular that I like is by Peter Schweitzer, which is the title of the book is Throw Them All Out. And he talks about a number of corporations in there that they'll give to both parties. And one of the reasons they'll give to both parties is to be able to get the favors that each are providing, and in some cases, too, to get them off their back. So, you know, without even hitting one specific example, you'll find that they're across the board because these temporary tax measures, things that Congress benefits from, corporations benefit from, but they all exist because of our tax code.
Well, that was one of the things that the Republican establishment was beating on Donald Trump about. Hey, he has donated to Democrats. Well, he's a businessman. He has to get along with everybody. That's just the system.
You're exactly right. That's the way it works. That's what the system provides, and people are going to utilize that system. And I mean, it just stands to reason. You're going to do what works best for your business. But you know, and in thinking about business, you know, we have to go all the way back to when FAIRtax came about, when Bob McNair and Leo Lindbeck and some of the others were sitting around, and Mr. Trotter, thinking about, you know, here we are today in a board meeting, and instead of focusing on what we can be doing to actually grow our businesses, to provide more jobs, higher wages, and make things better economically in America, what we're focusing on is how we can manipulate our business in order to be able to fix within, to exist within a tax code where we're going to benefit based upon that tax code. We want to eliminate that entirely. And unfortunately, we're going to continue to see that same thing if we move into another income tax. If we look at the Trump plan, Trump is talking about a 15% corporate tax. If we talk about Congress, they're talking about a 20% corporate tax. And interestingly enough, when we look at Congress's plan, that a Better Way plan, we're going to find that they have put some of the most interesting comments in there that are quotes from experts in the field that state exactly how much better a consumption-based system is, which the fair tax is a consumption-based tax system.
Yeah, we want the benefits of a consumption tax, but we want to keep taxing income so we can keep controlling folks. That's basically what it looks like to me.
That's exactly what it is, and they do this in the face of the facts that, hey, if little corporate tax is better, why not no corporate tax, and let's go with the best plan.
Absolutely. We're talking about, I'm looking at your little point-by-point system here where the fair tax is better than the Better Way plan. And the one I really want you to expound upon, because this was such a big issue in the campaign, jobs, returning jobs to America, best potential for increased wages. Compare the Better Way and the fair tax on that point.
Well, the big thing we're going to see out of it is going to be job growth. We're already seeing with the president-elect that he is attracting individuals. In fact, he had the chairman of the Alibaba Corporation over here yesterday, and he's starting to take interest in adding jobs to America, adding industry to America. And why are those people interested in coming here? Because they're seeing lower tax rates. In fact, they're probably being given some backdoor, if you will, information that looks favorable to them in terms of being able to grow their businesses in this country. And when we're talking about growing businesses here, then we're talking about more jobs, obviously, bringing businesses back from overseas that have departed from this country, bringing new businesses into this country that maybe have not been here previously. And they're all being attracted based upon the fact that we're going to be looking at lower tax rates, and with that, too, decreased regulation. Well, if a lower tax rate is going to draw in businesses, then a 0% tax rate is going to look even more favorable to even more businesses. And you combine that with decreased regulation, and it's going to be drawing people in. And I expect that that would certainly continue. And any time we have business growth in this country, and we have a strong and growing economy, then we're looking at increased wage potential too. And one of the things I think is very important is when we look at the number of people that we have today in this country that are operating below the poverty level, while not only in terms of increased business opportunities for them and job opportunities, but also the expanding opportunities that they will have for education. Today, once an individual that's below the poverty line that's getting the earned income tax credit, once they cross that poverty line, now they become fully penalized like the rest of us. And any additional money they save is going to be taxed. When they go and get additional education, that's going to be taxed. Well, under the fair tax, we don't tax that savings. If they get that additional job to potentially earn more money to get their kids through a better schooling opportunities or vocational opportunities, and then we're looking at just greater opportunities all the way around. More education, greater opportunities for higher wages then with new training that you get. It's just all around. It just makes sense. And really, this is what the Congress is telling us in the Better Way plan. If we do all these things, it presents better opportunities for Americans, for increased economy opportunities, for increased job growth, for increased wages, but they just are too timid to go all the way to the best plan. And again, that is to let's zero out business taxes and these other things that are obstructing growth opportunities in the nation today.
Yeah, well, you hit on the corporate tax rate and how that affects the economy and jobs and stuff like that. And, of course, the zero tax rate would certainly be great. But there are people out there who recoil in horror at the thought of multi-billion-dollar corporations not paying any taxes. How does that work? And they really don't realize what happens to a corporate tax. It gets rolled right onto the backs of the consumers and the investors and shareholders, people like that. Individuals pay those taxes, not the corporations.
That's exactly right. And a lot of people don't grasp that. Looking at the 20% tax rate, who's going to pay that? If Congress or the President passes their new their new tax reform measures that's proposing, well, it's going to be paid, number one, in higher prices for consumers because of a corporate tax in there. Not only that, but it decreases job opportunities. It decreases increased wage opportunities. In some cases, it can result in the loss of jobs. And in the worst case, we look at companies moving overseas. Mm-hmm. So we lose all those jobs altogether. It just doesn't serve to any good end. And when we're talking about a corporate tax rate, many times, people look at that and go, well, 20% doesn't sound too bad. Well, maybe 20% is really half of the cost. Let's look at compliance costs.
That's the biggie,
that
yes.
Businesses have to go through that never gets recorded anywhere unless it's folks like you and I and others that are really focused on taxes try to bring this to the attention of the public. It may be a 20% tax rate, but let's add on 10, 15, or 20% more in cost that it's going to be required to comply with that tax code. So one of the things that the fair tax does is reduce that compliance cost. In some cases, may eliminate it altogether, depending upon small business versus big business. But reducing that compliance cost is going to also benefit a reduction in prices under the fair tax. The whole thing of corporate taxes is one of those things. It's a liberal, progressive, socialist-inspired ideology that we're going to make people pay. We're going to make these big corporations pay. Well, that's not the case. Corporations don't pay taxes. The consumer pays taxes, and those who are looking for their retirements in the future to benefit from investments and the growth of those corporations, they're going to be the losers too under an income-based tax system. Okay,
let me shift gears here a little bit and go to a topic that we've been exploring here on the radio show here for the past couple of weeks, and that is tax evasion. You could not design a more fraud-prone, more error-prone, more, inviting to evasion form than the current income tax. And it's going to be very, very difficult to evade the fair tax.
Well, I tend to agree. It's going to be more difficult to evade the fair tax. So one study was done, I think it was up in Minnesota a number of years ago. They found that their sales tax evasion was much lower than what they found in terms of income tax. Now, regardless of what it is you put in, somebody's going to try to find some way to evade. But the beauty of the fair tax is it has inherent qualities that reduce that opportunity. And just to give you an example, number one, you eliminate 160 million individual tax filers. And you go from one agency overseeing 160 million tax filers plus another 30 million businesses, which is the IRS, to essentially 50 individual organizations that are only having to oversee the businesses within their states. So you reduce the workload in order to be able to ensure that people are complying with the tax code itself. The other thing is unlike the current system that doesn't reward businesses, in fact, it kind of penalizes businesses because they have to report payroll taxes, they have to report income taxes, they have to report corporate taxes, and then they have to remit those taxes that are part of their share of each one of those. Well, those things are going to go away under the fair tax. So you don't have all those requisites that you have today that you're penalized. And plus, if you do timely remit and report as a business, the taxes that you are due to pass along to the federal government, you will get to keep 0.25%. So they're actually rewarding businesses under the fair tax for being good collectors and remitters of taxes, whereas the current system penalizes them. So all in all, between the breadth, the size of the oversight that you need today under the current system and any income-based tax system versus what you have under the fair tax, which is significantly reduced, combined with rewarding employers for paying the taxes, those are just one of many of the inherent qualities that will reduce any potential evasion in the future.
Amen. Let me ask you one more quick question here. I mean, we're over here in Florida, and you're out there in Nevada. We see a lot of grassroots activity here in the Southeast. What does it look like, from the grassroots out there in that part of the country? Have we got a lot of folks walking around with fair tax gear?
No, we don't, and it's very unfortunate that we do.
So we need to fix that.
Well, I tell you what, we're working very hard on it. Last week, I spoke to one of the largest Republican groups here in the state. That was the Nevada Republican Men's Club, and we had a tremendous response out of that. Yesterday, I was in Laughlin, Nevada, spoke with a Republican group there, and out of these, I'm going to be speaking on the syndicated radio show Wayne Allen Root's War Show on Friday, this Friday. It's be broadcast at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. Mm-hmm. The following Monday of next week, I'm going to be on a very popular radio show here in Las Vegas, the Kevin Walsh Show, which is a very big show, tremendous audience. And from there, what we're seeing is that because we're really taking a more direct approach, and I hate to use the word attack, but we're really revealing just how bad the system is in terms of income-based taxes. And we're focusing on that as opposed to try to explain to America, the fair tax is great, but we never really try to focus on, just how bad the other system is. And we want to bring it down to something as simple as what the president has done. The president focused on what? Build the wall, make America great. Mm-hmm. That was his two big things.
Yes.
And what we need to do is focus on this. Number one, do you want to continue to be controlled, or do you want to have the freedom that will come with fair tax? And when I talk about freedom, it's not a measure under the fair tax of whether somebody's paying more or somebody's paying less tax. We all know that freedom is not free. So regardless of what your tax consequence may be, you have to make the decision. Do you want to continue going down the path we've been going down, or do you want something better for America that presents opportunities for every American and every business that an income-based tax system never will, as 104 years has proven, will not work?
Oh, no. And I just don't like having the idea of having to sit down for 2 hours with a pile of receipts, excuse me, and work on what is a fairly simple income tax return, and it still takes me 2 hours to do it.
That's exactly
I don't know anybody
right.
that really enjoys that, do you?
No, not at all. And one of the things, too, the Congress keeps talking about is, well, you're going to be able to do your taxes on a postcard unless. It's that unless that always catches you. Mm-hmm. And that is because there are still going to be credits and deductions. I know they're trying to minimize some of those, but here's the bottom line on this. Bob, today there are approximately 400 changes each and every year to our tax code, 400 annual changes to that code. With every Congress, we get approximately 1,000 changes. I can assure you, before the ink has dried on any new tax code, those 400-plus changes will have begun immediately in earnest. And the reason why is because no avenue will have been closed to prevent it from happening.
Amen. Well, I sure appreciate your time and your effort talking to us today. It has been a pleasure. Time flies when you're having fun. And,
yes, it does.
We will indeed be talking to you again later if you would be so kind as to talk to us again.
Happy to do it, Bob. Thank you very much, and my best to you and Ron.
All right. You have a great day. Thank you.
You too. Thank you.
Bye-bye. There you go. FairTax Power Radio's interview with a former presidential candidate and activist for the FairTax, Kerry Bowers. He's an interesting guy to talk to.
He certainly is. He's well educated. He's got a very varied background. And as you can hear, he's very passionate about the fair tax and what Congress is currently doing to the American people.
Yeah, you can tell that the idea of the government using the tax code to control people is one of his hot buttons.
Oh, it certainly is. It's not the first time we've heard that, but obviously he's very, very passionate about it. And he's right. I mean, the tax control is, the tax code, now he's got me saying it, the tax code is, there's a lot of control there.
Yeah, people that study the Constitution and value liberty will find that to be a real problem. But really, the thing that's going to affect most people, I believe, with the fair tax is reviving the economy and bringing back jobs. That is a biggie that everybody can latch on to.
That's right. You know, I think we did an episode like "What's in it for me," and for one of the things is you get the full gross amount of your paycheck. All right. I mean, who's not going to be in favor of that?
And you get the prebate on top of that. So that's a winner.
That's right. That's right. So you and your family are going to be doing a whole lot better under the fair tax.
And of course, he touched as well on what we talked with Randy Fisher about a couple of weeks ago, the fraud and evasion that is just rampant in the income tax.
Yeah. And if you remember last week's episode, we spelled that out in great detail. We did a follow-up to Randy's interview because we feel that evasion and fraud thing is so important. But
that's what's going to get the politicians' attention. The jobs is going to get the people's attention. The evasion and fraud is going to get the politicians' attention.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it, Bob.
So if you're out there promoting the fair tax, those are the two things you really want to hit on hard. And we've got just a couple of minutes left in this episode. How can folks help? We have to hit on that every week.
Okay. We can. I don't know how long this will last, but if you go to greatagain.gov, and as soon as the page loads, you'll see a link for Share Your Story. And it's more than share your story. It's like tell the Trump team what you want changed, what you expect out of the new administration. And we hope you say something about the fair tax. We need to get the fair tax in here. So, and this is something you can do it more than once. So, you know, the phrase vote early and vote often, that applies to greatagain.gov.
And now with the new session of Congress, all of the bills that were in this last Congress that didn't pass are gone.
Yep.
The fair tax has been reintroduced in both the House and the Senate. Again, H.R. 25 in the House. It's S-18 this year in the Senate. And those of you that have gone to PopVox in support of the fair tax need to go do that again with this new Congress.
Yeah, we need to start all over again because Congress is starting all over again. This is the 115th Congress. They start everything all over again, okay, including the bills. So if you're on PopVox, go there again and show your support for H.R. 25, and this time it's S-18, as Bob said. And if you're not on PopVox, it's free. And it's a great way to show your support for any legislation, including the fair tax.
Yeah, you do have to register. You have to give it your address, and so it knows what congressional district you're in.
Yep.
And then any feedback that you put into that website is immediately sent to your congressional representative and your state's 2 senators.
And if you need to contact us, FairtaxGuys@gmail.com. And we have a Facebook page. You can put comments there, too.
And we'll be doing another Facebook Live here, probably the first part of February. So hopefully you can check that out as well. That was fun.
Yeah, it was. And it was interesting. And it was rewarding.
That it was. Well, I'll tell you what, that's about all the time we've got for this edition of FairTax Power Radio. Thank you so much for listening. I'm Bob Paxton.
And I'm Ron Malero.
We are the FairTax Guys, reminding you that the fair tax is America's big solution. And once you understand it,
you'll demand it.
Fair tax is coming. Don't stand in the way. Fair tax is coming.